I loved how accessible Amelia and Harris were on that panel. That was awesome. You don't see that often. For our next panel, I'm going to welcome the wonderful, beautiful, absolutely majestic Jeanne Sullivan to the stage, and we're going to keep this thing rolling. Please give her a round of applause.
So I want to know, what kind of a weed person are you? Are you the connoisseur kind that will, of course, only drink a Grand Cru DRC? Or do you just not even care and you'll take boxed wine and you want the highest THC and the lowest price pre-roll when you go, which kind are you? Think about that. So we have incredible OG growers and thought leaders in our business who know all about that. We're going to talk about what is their secret sauce to produce these gorgeous craft flower. Aren't we lucky? So I am Jeanne Sullivan. I am a longtime investor and now 12 years in this crazy, zany, goofy, completely nuts business, but I love it. I am been part of ArcView for many years, run a fund with my colleague Jeff, who's here. And I am thrilled to be an evangelist this week for the amazing Verdant Strategies and Rachel Wright. She's just an incredible CPA. But one of the most fun things I am doing is I am now playing in the international sandbox. And let me tell you, it's not perfect, but it's a lot of fun, especially with countries announcing that they are federally legal for medical. Is that cool? And I got to introduce Charlie Bechtel at ICBC, and I said to a large crowd, it's deja vu all over again. And that's because it's repeating everything we've gone through. Are they going to learn our lessons or not? So it's pretty interesting what's going on. So let's get down to business. Let's start. Josh, who are you and what are you working on?
I'm Joshua Krane. I am the fractional head of innovation for Justice, and I'm working on innovating and surviving in a rapidly expanding New Jersey market.
Pretty good.
I'm Chad Salute, National Head of Cultivation for iAnthus. We operate in Florida, New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts, and our mission is craft cannabis and bringing the cultivator forward.
My name is David Holmes. I'm the co-founder of Clade 9 and the co-founder of the QCC Group, which is the license here in New Jersey that distributes the Clade 9 brand, Craft Kings, and Locals Only. I'm just here to grow fire and, smoke weed and talk about cultivation and genetics.
Hi, my name is Tanner Travers. I'm the founder of Pantheon. We run a Tier 1 cultivation facility here in New Jersey. I'm a United States Army veteran, and I hold a degree in plant biology from Rutgers University. I really have a big love on tissue culture, preservation of genetics, and banking, and just looking to grow some great weed and get something awesome out onto the market.
I'm David Todd. I'm the VP of Enterprise Solutions at GrowGeneration. I help bring our private label products into our enterprise level customers, the largest operators in the country, and find gaps where we can sell solutions into them.
Thank you. Pretty cool, huh? So our hope is to really share things that you want to understand and know that maybe you don't know. So even down to some secrets, if we can get that out of them. Josh, talk to us. Tell us about what's going on for you. We're starting to see some price compression here. How do you deal with that? How do you make your genetics special? Talk to us about what you can do to combat, to play in such a competitive market as things do erode.
So I think now is the time to innovate and to find that genetic library that's going to give you economic viability later, right? So compression's just beginning here in Jersey, and so ultimately I think that yield will sort of rule supreme as prices compress. But until we're at that full maturation of the market, right, now is the time to discover what your market wants, what your customer wants, what works best for your strategy and your grow sort of philosophy. And then to really dial that in, because ultimately we're all going to hit our canopy cap, and right then it's going to be a race to see who can stay economically viable. So great weed now, right, to future-proof revenues tomorrow.
Now, that's interesting because you're in other states. So what have you learned or, what have you brought to the table for Jersey that maybe you've learned in another state?
Well, the first thing I learned is that the things that work in other states don't work in Jersey.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
This is a unique market with a unique customer base that wants a very specific set of characteristics in their cannabis. Right? For example, coming out of California, they love candy out there, right? This is a haze fuel-driven market, right? So there's a different taste profile for what customers are looking for. And this is especially in a new market, right? Very, very much driven on potency. And so some of the things that I love to smoke, right, aren't necessarily viable in this marketplace because it's not the flavor profile or the terpene profile that the customer's looking for, and it doesn't check that sort of ultra potency box.
I think that's so interesting. Like, how'd you sort that out? How'd you figure that out? Do you have bud bars in the dispensaries that show these different flavor profiles?
You got to talk to the customers.
Yeah.
Right. So you figure it out by going direct to these customers and seeing what resonates with them. I think early on you can throw your spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, and see what really resonates with the customers. But this is a very vocal market. Right, and so not just the buyers and the bud tenders, but the consumers themselves are happy to share with you what they liked, what they didn't. And so I think what we did is you start with genetics that you think are going to be a match, and then you have to tune and tailor that to what the market's telling you.
That is so interesting, Dave. What do you say? Go ahead. Yeah, Chad.
You talk about THC driven, right? And I think that's a sign of an immature market. Education is key here, right? We all know THC is not the marker of a good genetic. You smoke it, the psychoactive effects is more of an entourage effect, and education to the customers is what we're trying to get out there. California, we were THC driven. We still are, right? It moved to candies, and now it's moved to terp expression. And we're starting to see the purple candies now taking a side stance into more of a green terpene profile that we're looking for, right? So consumer education, I think, is one of the biggest things that we need to do as an industry to push forward that, hey, it's not just THC. It shouldn't be just THC because that is not what all the plant's all about.
That's interesting, too. Did it take you a while to figure that out? How did you figure that?
I mean, I've been smoking since the late 90s, so we didn't have testing back then, right? We weren't doing COAs on everything, so if it was fire in the bag, you ate with your eyes, you smelt it, and then you smoked it, and if it hit all the marks, it was a winner, right? The bag said it, you smoked it, and then it sold. But now that you are driven by a COA and consumers see the THC percentage, they're going in thinking this is gonna fuck me up the most. And it's just not true.
So, Dave Holmes, everybody talks about your Clad 9. What makes that so special? Talk to us about that. And
I think it's just me being old and being around long enough to figure it out. But it's a lot of things, right? It's the genetics, it's the cultivation techniques, it's Josh said, knowing the consumer really well. So I've had a lot of time to kind of figure out what the consumer likes. It started in LA, sitting in a line of trappers with turkey bags selling to dispensaries, and you're competing on quality, right? Before COAs, it was bag appeal. It was.
People can hear your wisdom.
Oh yeah.
Keep
Sorry.
that mic up.
Sorry, I'm moving around.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I was fortunate enough to kind of be in the game long enough to figure out what the consumer likes, right? I have my own likes. I've already gone through the failure of trying to push and sell what I like, and as a business owner, you have to listen to the customer, right? So I think part of it is experience. One of the things we've done over the years that's become a really popular event is we have something called the Terp Master, where we invite a couple hundred people and we sample out a bunch of different strains and take surveys. It's really nerdy, kind of like, cultivation nerd stuff, but we get great data, we understand what people like, and that's helped a lot.
Well,
We've been doing that for about 13 years.
I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
Now, you're really a proponent about hybrid seeds and have a whole philosophy. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, it's just something that's been on the horizon. It's interesting to talk about. I'm not necessarily a proponent yet.
Okay.
But so for those who don't know, there's breeding is now kind of ticked up a notch in cannabis. Before it was all just kind of closet breeders, but recently, maybe the last 5 years, there's been kind of larger scale breeding programs, and part of what people are looking at on the horizon is something called hybrid seeds, where you have a pack of seeds that you grow, or 500 seeds or 1,000 seeds that you could plant in your indoor facility that could potentially be totally uniform, that they replace mothers and clones. Are we there yet? I don't think we're there yet. It's probably 10 years or 20 years away, but it's just something to consider and think about as like an investor, as a business owner. You got to keep your kind of finger on the pulse of the genetics game, and hybrid seeds is one of the topics for sure to think about.
So, Chad, let's go back to you for a minute. You really believe that the cultivator's eye is really keen. Tell us about that, your philosophies there.
So I've been growing since the late 90s, and I got to say, this guy grows some of the best cannabis that I've smoked,
Amazing.
Definitely a fan. But, you can have all the SOPs in place. We know how to grow cannabis commercially, right? There's, you have the right environment, you have the right lighting, the right irrigation. Any nutrient company out there is going to kill it. It's the one that gives you the most support. But the cultivator's eye is a cultivator that can come in and read the plants every day, can push those plants as hard as they can to get the most expression out of that plant. And it's not just a set it and forget it environment, light strategy, irrigation strategy. You're reading the leaf position, you're reading the color of the plant, and you're trying to train these as athletes. Like from veg is the most important, right? You're training this plant in veg to be the strongest plant it can be, to run the marathon and bloom. And when they get to bloom, you're adjusting these levels every day you're in there. So if you don't have somebody that can read the plant, can look over a canopy of 1,000 plants or 10,000 plants or whatever it is and see sections within this canopy that are going bad. And I know David probably gets up there and looks over the canopy, can pick out a group and say, hey, there's a microclimate there that I need to adjust. Yeah. And that's really where, I think a lot is lost on the cultivator side, right? People just want to get the cheapest person in there that can run the program, but it's not about that in craft cannabis. It's about reading the plant daily and pushing the plant daily with what it can take and backing off when you need to back off. Yeah. And that's the cultivator's eye.
Jump in there, Dave.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, we all have SOPs, right? As commercial cultivators, you have a list of things your growers are doing. Do this, do this, do this. But there's a lot of in between the lines that, like you said, you got to make an adjustment. Oh, the plants are not maturing as quick, or you just feel something is off, right? So the data that you're seeing is not correct. Maybe you're getting microclimate. So there's a lot of that art. That's where the art of cultivation comes in, the experience, and where you need someone like a Chad to be in there to help train his team, that there's these little things you have to look at that are in between the lines of the SOPs that really make a difference between a B+ or an A+ product.
That is fascinating. Josh, what's your view on the cultivator's eye?
It's the difference between mids and great weed, right? The SOP will get you to a plant that flowers, right? And so, but being able to, just like Chad said, read that plant, understand I'm not seeing the stack I want, I'm not seeing the the bud formation that I want, right? I'm not getting, it's not responding to the signals that I'm giving it, right? Especially in a crop steering protocol where you're giving micro signals to the plant to give you a specific expression. You have to be able to know that cultivar, and each one is different, and each one responds to the signals differently. So at the head of your org, right, if there isn't someone that has, I call it weed goggles, but I really like the way you put it. But if someone doesn't have those goggles, the best SOPs, the best building, the best nutrients, the best SOP, that's not going to get you to the best expression of that plant.
It would be fun for us to learn. How long did it take to get those goggles? You know, what kind of...
Decades.
Still getting them.
Well, I'm old, so I've been smoking since the 80s. So I don't feel like I really felt like I had them until my 40s, right? And so that was, 15, 20 years of looking at this plant to really feel like, okay, hey, are we looking at this? Are we a little low on nutrients here? I don't like the way that this is responding. But then on a per cultivar basis, right, I still need a few turns with the plant to really understand how it responded to the tweaks that we've made, right, to really, really understand, am I getting the best out of this plant, and is it going to stay in our cultivation long term?
Tanner, talk to us.
Yeah, so one of the things that's great about everything that my colleagues are saying up here is how do we get there through cultivation, but I think just like a great thing to remind everybody of is that the genetics that you're working with always define the upper limit of what is achievable in the cultivar to begin with. So just like in people, if you're 5'4", just because you got nutrition your whole life doesn't make you 6 foot. Sorry to all my short kings, but that's just kind of how it works. So with having data points set inside your grow, I don't know about you guys, we're running GrowLink in ours, and we have subzones in every single room, and it's helped us identify problems that are going on inside the grow before they become. I'm getting pings at 11 p.m. getting back over to the grow at almost midnight just to kind of correct those things on the fly so that we can get something out to the market that expresses something that's really great and achieves what that like upper epigenetic limit is of the cultivar.
Yeah, and look, the data back in is really important, but it's how well you read that data, and then more importantly, how you respond to that data that makes the difference between decent weed and great weed.
Yeah.
And for either of you, is that the use of technology or using the data? What are you doing?
I would say it's a hand in hand. Like growing cannabis, I would say is 50% science and 50% art, kind of like how you guys are talking about the weed goggles. It's having the know-how, it's having the experience, and it's being familiar with the plant, understanding it and loving it and giving it the attention it deserves, while also having the peace of mind to understand the data that you're getting and understanding that some things aren't going to work the same way for you that they might have worked for someone else. Maybe not. Maybe you made a mistake where you ran 2 strains in a room that want totally different climates, different dryback sessions, and you just couldn't split your irrigation the way you need to. And that's just kind of a learning process and a growing pain that you might have to go through to really understand what you're working with and what works for you in your program specifically.
Do you agree with that, Josh, about technology?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, especially as we get to, I think every cultivator's dream is to monocrop the room, right? One crop, one environment, right? But we don't have that luxury, especially if you want to keep a fairly decent menu going, right? With most of the cultivations in Jersey, you have to do multi-crop, right, per room, which means ultimately you're picking some set points and trying to steer that room towards either a mean or, right, a max that is right for one of the genetics in there, and then hoping to be able to group together other genetics that will respond to those same signals, that same environment.
Something that I thought was so interesting is you're so clear about what Jersey customers want. But because of that, how many different strains are you running right now in Jersey?
The current program that we're looking at just introduced 75 new cultivars and had a rotation of about 26. But of those 75, I only expect about 25 of those to stay.
Got it.
And like I started with, very much still in experimentation, while the market is still immature, the customer is not fully educated, and the prices are high enough to absorb some of those mistakes as we learn.
Tanner, in our planning session, you were just so, I like what you brought to the table about what can we learn from other industries and all. Tell us about that. Give us some insights, what you think.
Yeah, so obviously we're introducing a lot of new technologies into a newly legal regulated market, and one thing that I would really love to see come through and what we're going to be getting into is genetic banking services over a long period of time, and I'm specifically talking about like liquid nitrogen cold storage. So we talk over the years, I'm sure everybody's heard this before, is like, man, I really miss 2008 Sour Diesel and 2013 Blue Dream. Like, where did all these things go? The problem is when you're running mother stock for prolonged periods of times, you have problems like pathogens showing up over a prolonged period of time that might lose the cultivar. You have epigenetic drift. And there's just a wide variety of things that can go wrong. Somebody might not want to hold on to that table space for years and years and years. So what we can do is we can take meristematic tissue, put it on a Petri dish, freeze it, and then warm the cells up later and reanimate it, and you could have that perfect, exact plant that you had 8 to 10 years ago. And cannabis is kind of one of the only industries where we expect to lose great things over a period of time just because of timelines. Now, maybe I'm sorry to be a little long-winded on this. I'm very passionate about this topic. Something that I'd really love to see is maybe you had something, like we're talking about the candies and how we have different profiles in different areas and what we're doing. Maybe you have something in your garden that's selling really well, but consumers get bored. They want something new, but you don't want to lose that cultivar. But in 5 to 6 years, they'll start thinking about that again. And then maybe you could do something like run a nostalgia run, where you could reanimate that and get it back out onto the market for a short period of time, a promotional event, kind of things like that. So final closing thoughts on this is I really love the plant, and I really want to see it thrive. And I think the loss of genetics over a period of time is a tragedy. And right now, the technologies exist on the market for this integration.
Chad.
Yeah, you talk about epigenetic drift, and there is that, right? And we talk about meristematic resetting, right? There's also a point where we don't want to reset it all the way because it might have picked up some traits along the way that was expressing the genetics the way we want it. And for example, our OG strain, right? When you did tissue culture on it, it did not come back the way I remember OG when I was smoking in the early 2000s. It got brought back and it wasn't as good. So there is a reset in time, I think, that you don't always want to reset it all the way. Like, I love the idea of getting rid of all of the pathogens that are in the viruses that are in the plant. But I will tell you, when I've done meristematic tissue culture and brought back genetics, they did not express the way I wanted them to express.
Well, I think that a fair point is, as you're running that, is that since this is such since it's newer to our industry than previous industries, is we have other areas in agriculture that are running it, that are getting consistent results over a period of time. And I really think it's more of a timeline, data, financing, backing, and all the things that go into it that can make it as great as it is used in regular agricultural fields. And I think that time will be the telltale factor here on, is this something that's sustainable for long term? And still, what I love about tissue culture is that we get to save on all of that mother space and all the propagation space over a period of time.
Genetic banking.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't feel bad, Chad. No one remembers what real OG tastes like.
I'm dating myself there, right? Yeah.
No, genetic banking is nice. I mean, I have I have a pre-98 Bubba that I've been lugging around for 20 years.
Pre-98?
Yeah.
I got one of those,
I probably
too.
spent $1
was
million
6.
just holding the genetic, for all the rent I've paid and places I've kept it. But there are some solutions already in tissue culture banking. There's some companies that do that. So, I mean, those solutions are here, not in Jersey, but they are available.
We do have a lack of nurseries in New Jersey right now, and I really kind of associate that with how hard the footprint is to get like a hold of real estate in general, just to even get up and running. I've talked to a few nurseries on the beginning, up and coming, that's all they wanted to do. They just wanted to provide local, maybe to get into overstate lines down the line. And it's just so hard to get up in this industry that we're losing a lot of talent to licensing and property acquisition barriers that really do deserve to have a chance to shine, but they just haven't yet.
Well, and those nurseries don't have a path to economic viability in Jersey yet, right? But I actually have a question for David. So when you bring back the Bubba, does it check the 26 boxes for you, right? Is that
pre-98 Bubba does not check all the boxes. No,
right.
It doesn't.
And so what I find is a lot of times, like, we have this nostalgia around certain strains that we as smokers really want to bring back. And when we do, it doesn't check the boxes that we need to check in 2026 for either the consumer profile or the yields that we need to hit especially. So I'm just kind of curious, when you bring those things back from the legacy,
Yeah, I mean, I think some strains have it. Like OG Kush, I think you could bring it back. And I think mainly it's shaped by the COA. Unfortunately, right, in the regulated market, the COA is still king. No matter what you do, you could have the most fire strain that tests at 20%. It's going to be hard to sell at retail, right? No matter how fire it is, how great it smokes, it's just hard because the consumer education is so behind. I always like to use the alcohol analogy. The weed industry is like an 18-year-old college kid who's drinking Bacardi 151, right? Like, to them, that's the best thing there is on the shelf. But in reality, it's like that aged bourbon, right? That's much, much better and higher quality that they have to learn to love, but it just takes time to get there. But yeah, a lot of the OG strains, the old school strains, don't translate to the regulated market. Few do. I think OG Kush does. Pre-98 Bubba, definitely not.
So, Dave Todd of GrowGen, what do you think about all this? You're selling products to this wonderful world.
Yeah, I mean, is the stuff that they were using to grow those strains back then even around anymore? So there's like at least on the supply side, there's a huge discussion. Ran at length up in Oregon, like, where did all the skunk go? And so we started talking about it. People used to run a bunch of 20-20-20 and a ton of different inputs that would just never get used anymore. So, or when we're talking about plant nutrition, these ratios have been highly manipulated and studied now that are driving things into more of a point. But, you know, these nostalgic memories of strains, which I'm too young to have, and I'll just self-admit, right? I was 3 when 98 Bubba was a thing. So,
thanks a lot.
I hope I didn't get any. But, you know, when we're talking about doing research and development on products for, like, GrowGeneration's private label, right, we want to take in all of this data of the nostalgia, right? And how much can we attribute, like, pieces and processes to what made weed so good back before I had memories of it? So, like, I would like to know if you think that's a valid point to this genetic conversation, because what commercial cultivation looks like today is so different from even the earliest pictures on Instagram.
I mean, I think we were using a lot of bullshit back then, and we probably stressed the plant out to express something that we didn't know I was expressing it. I think nowadays we have all the resources from the vendors, from the manufacturers, and the data to give us to get the most vigor out of the plant. And I know David and Josh, you guys have been around for a long time, and you probably had some really good runs when you fucked it up in the cultivation, and you're like, holy shit, this really expressed super well. What the hell did I do? And, knowing what stressors bring out expressions in the plant is one of the things that I think is a new frontier, right? Like, how much can we stress the plant without hurting yield and hurting the plant, and then getting that terpene expression back? So what are those stress triggers? And the studies are coming out. They're researching this, and that's why I'm super excited about research going into this, because we will learn trigger points, stressors, and how much stressor to provide to the plant to get the expression we're trying to desire out of that plant.
You know, as long as you open the door on research, I've learned from you about these grant programs, starting California, right? And then will that spread to other states? Tell us about that, because that is...
I'm a big fan of research, and, I do look at other industries. I've always, before we had, an open forum to discuss cannabis, I would go online looking at big ag and kind of looking at sister crops and hops and stuff like that, and seeing what research was bring in those industries and trying to bring it to cannabis. And now that it's opened up to actually study the plant, right? And
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, right? You said rose gold glasses. I'm still that way. I still believe
it's an important trait to have.
I still believe that we're in this industry for a reason. And I'm not stopping on it, but yes, I'm very hopeful that we'll get the research that will really express the plant medicinally the way we want to express it.
One of the most fascinating sessions I ever got a chance to lead was at Benzinga, and I asked, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago? So how about that? What do you wish you knew?
Dude, there's so much. If I could go back in time, yeah, I probably would have done a lot of things. I'm very blessed, to be up here, to be speaking to you, to be at the head position in my company for cultivation. And I'm very blessed on that. But, if I would have changed things 10 years ago, I can't answer that. But I think the amount of failures that we've done throughout our cultivation careers has really helped us learn our path in this industry, because, like there's a saying, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And we're always pushing forward to become better and better.
What about lessons learned, Dave?
10 years ago lesson, if it was 10 years ago, all the technology I had now, I would take it back to the future, back to the past. Obviously we've learned so much, and I was going to say the modern cultivator is very spoiled, because when we were growing in the 90s and the early 2000s, there wasn't really any textbooks, right? You had to learn on grow forums and your friends, and all under the risk of like getting arrested. So you learned very slow, but you learned well, right? I think when you learn slow, you learn better sometimes. But I think, the lessons learned are technological on the business side, right? Like what cultivars, what places would you grow? California, stay the fuck out of there. Don't grow in California. That would have been something for sure I wouldn't have done, like on the commercial scale. I would have stayed in the trap forever. But, I think there's a lot of lessons learned across the board, from the business side to technology.
Tanner, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago?
10 years ago, my biggest worry was, do I smell like alcohol on my morning run in the Army? So things were a lot different for me. But I guess 10 years ago, as I was, I kind of always knew I wanted to get involved in a science. If there's anybody younger who's listening, whether you want to get involved in this industry or not, get involved with your education sooner than later. That doesn't necessarily mean going to college. That means doing your due diligence, picking up a book, getting on YouTube, and really learning about what you want to do with your life in the future. And I don't mean that just for cannabis. I mean that for everything. And it'll take you really far in life.
Josh, any stories there for you about what do you wish you knew?
I wish I knew about minoxidil a lot earlier. I think I was still stars in my eyes and sort of searching out that cannabis dream more 10 years ago. I think I wish someone had come to me and said, build, don't buy, right? Where I think a lot of big cannabis has sort of made mistakes over the last 10 years in their acquisition strategies. I wish I would have found a magic bullet back then for the things that we love to smoke and a way to educate this next crop of customers as to, there's things that we were smoking back in the day, even longer than 10 years ago, that still, from a nostalgia perspective, that was the best high I had. But now, when I go to commercialize those strains, they test 19 to 22%. It's almost impossible to sell them in this market. And so I wish I had found a sort of magic bullet snapshot of how high I was to be able to then project that forward to today's consumer.
That is so crazy. So those high THC levels really do matter on the revenues.
Yeah, more THC does not get you more high.
Right.
Right. It's absolutely.
Preach.
As Chad said, it's the entourage effect. It's the terpene expression. It's the minor cannabinoids in the plant. Right. But this is still an immature market, and the consumer has been given a number, and they can't see the cannabis before they buy it. And so what they see is a tiny little menu photograph, right? And they see these COA results. And so luckily now we're starting to see consumers shopping more on terpenes than they have in the past, right? But then it's still a numbers game. A 3% terpene expression in a plant sells better than a 2%. But are they the right terpenes? Is it in the right combination, right? Does the plant actually get you high? That's not readable from a COA. And do you like that high? And especially with all this breeding that's going on and like all of the new cultivars that the industry has developed, each one is going to express that profile a little differently. It's going to have a different effect on the consumer. And so... And unfortunately, it's not like whiskey where, cool, I found my whiskey. This is the one. I'm going to drink this for the rest of my life. These consumers get tired, right? You found the thing that you love. 6 months later, you're like, this doesn't hit like it used to. I'm on to the next. And so we're constantly looking for things that these consumers liked to smoke.
Just to say another word about what you wish you knew, speaking from the investor lens, and I feel it's relevant to what we're talking about. That is certainly, we thought legalization would have happened within 5 years. And the joke among us is, oh, it's another 5 years. And so who knows? 5? Is it 10 years, 5 years? Who knows? Who knows? But the other thing, and this is so relevant, is no one understood the power of the anti-cannabis movement. That is one of the things that is keeping us back from just full-on make it happen. Like what's happening now in Europe. It's certainly there too. The stigma is there too, but they are boldly going forward with some regulations to, make it federally legal, at least for medical, for starters. So trying to overcome that stigma. And that's what's holding us back a lot of this. Why we have to say to each other, let's keep the rose-colored glasses instead of let's go. I mean, don't we all want, descheduling, not this crazy S3 rescheduling. Let's just blow it open. And now I see Canada exporting, making millions of dollars in Europe. So why don't we fight for exporting? I'm for that too. Wouldn't that be incredible? So, I don't know. These are things I think about and just wondered if you do too. Is that on your mind, any of that?
Yeah, I wish I could export. We should be able to export in the U.S. That'd be really nice. But, obviously with the way that the state regulations go, it just doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon. There's a whole other can of worms, I think. When you think about like Canada and them exporting internationally, there's like these kind of GMP kind of level facilities they have to have, so your costs increase a lot. And potentially just like the way that, lab testing works and COAs work, it could detrimentally affect your product. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit. You're talking about the COA, I think, is really kind of overvalued in cannabis by the consumer, and I think the only way to get to the next step where we look at the product for what it is to kind of reduce the importance of the COA. But I think it's kind of tied into the international production. The way that stuff is being exported out of Canada has to go through these really tightly regulated channels, and it makes the product not great, unfortunately. That's why in the UK people are importing weed from Canada still, or from California as opposed to Canada. So I mean, we want to get to export, but there's a lot of kind of nuance to get to that level for sure.
Yeah, I think exporting at a large scale is going to have exactly that effect, right? It's not going to be the small craft cannabis growers that are exporting cannabis. Right. It's going to be large scale ag growers that are chasing yield, right, and chasing stability. And so I think that yes, if you're chasing dollars, absolutely. We'd love to be able to make millions of dollars selling cannabis all over the world. If you're chasing the best expression of the plant, right, the smaller the better. That little micro grow with 160 lights is producing far better weed than any one of us with 1,000 lights in a large-scale facility. And when you start to really scale up for export, right, it's the corners that get cut. The yield becomes the most important metric, right? But that's going to be in direct opposition to the quality.
Back to GrowGen and Dave. Because you're one of the major provisioners, what are people buying? What's selling? What's hot? What's not?
Well, I mean, we're just busting open these European markets now. So we're getting all of our registrations done for our private label fertilizers, drip, Charcoal, as well as our additives, Power SI. So it's really exciting to go think about teaching a new or a foreign generation about American IP and products that we've been developing here stateside. But what's really selling is stuff that gives cultivators an edge, whether it's because they don't fail as often, because everybody on this panel knows how hard it is to keep the wheels on the wagon every single day. So when we look at doing, again, our research and development for our private label products, we are always looking at, simplicity and leverage in regard to how simple can we deliver a product so we can keep the cost appropriate, and what is its failure states. So like all of the research is done at facilities that are now, GrowGen associated. So by the time that the cultivators get the next product, either through charcoal or drip, like it's been ran on contemporary genetics. Like we have an R&D trial going on right now that's running on the toad venom. Like we want to know what's going to work, right? And so
A little bit of a hype on that toad venom, just going to
I've
say.
been hearing so much about toad venom.
I have it.
Stop
I have
the
it.
last
It's
month.
good.
That's all I hear about.
Good.
yeah, so exactly. So if more people want to grow it, then more people want to buy it, and there's hype behind it. We want to know why our products make it better. And fundamentally, like, when we step up to the plate every day and ask questions as GrowGeneration, it is these different aspects for supply. Like you said, what are people buying? People are buying information, trust, and diligence in product development.
So the data is important.
Yeah, the data. We can back so many of our products with, the exact R&D that went into the value proposition of the product. And we'd like to share that with our customers.
All right, quick lightning round. Speak up. What one innovation you think could happen over the next X years? What's ahead? Anything truly innovative hit you or that you want to have happen?
I see a lot in spectrum tuning. I think Nelson is out there, Poetry of Plants. We had a discussion at MJ Biz a couple years ago about this. There's something to it, but there's also a lot of snake oil to it as well. Light cycles in flower. There's definitely something to it. So to be more efficient on driving this plant and maybe not giving it 12 hours of of light and maybe pushing it to 13 hours on a flower cycle. I do think there's a lot of research going into that to increase yields and terpene expression on stuff we've always kind of took for granted, like you flower at 12 hours of light, that's your flowering photo period. So I'm interested in seeing the research that's going that way, running some R&D on that. But when you run R&D, it takes away cultivation space, and you lose a little bit of money on those cultivars, and you have to have a repeated cycle to see if it actually is worthwhile to run. So spectrum tuning and light cycles and flower, I think, are two avenues that I'd like to see more research on.
The hook is out. Join me in thanking our illustrious panel of great growers and thought leaders.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Sorry I can't make it by, did you?
All right, I hope you're not going anywhere. We got two more panels before lunch. One thing that's